The following is a Cairo 7 Eyewitness News special presentation.
A Seattle cop with a brutal reputation.
You ever been beat so bad your hair hurts?
Turns to a life of crime. Bank robbery, assault.
When I thought he was going to shoot me.
And murder, 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 murder. Tonight, Cairo Team 7 investigators unearth new clues linking 4 unsolved homicides here in the Pacific Northwest to one hitman.
Gary Kruger is a cold-blooded killer.
We reveal for the first time who police think murdered hotel and restaurant union leader Mario Vaccarino in 1985 and why his death was staged to look like the work of the mob.
There was also Parmesan cheese sprinkled over the victim when he was put in the bathtub.
Follow Cairo Team 7 investigators from an isolated desert outside Las Vegas to the bottom of Lake Washington and hear why King County cold case detectives think this professional wasn't working alone.
You believe that he had friends, associates that are also killers still out there?
Without a doubt.
From Cop to Killer begins right now. Good evening. I'm investigative reporter Chris Halsney. For the past 2 years, Team 7 investigators have been telling you about the horrendous, murderous acts of a Seattle-based hitman by the name of Gary Kruger. Police tell me that he killed for personal revenge. He killed for money. He even killed total strangers when someone else wanted them dead.
Delivered someplace else!
In the mid-1980s, Mario Vaccarino was a powerful man.
I don't care what management is saying, that is not true.
As an outspoken leader of both Seattle's Local 8 and the International Hotel and Restaurant Employees Union, he fired up emotional protests, pressuring downtown hospitality industry business owners to accept organized unions.
You want to try to hurt me? Go on, scab.
He lived a contentious life as the president of the union, trying to unionize these shops who didn't want to become union, and there was a lot of pickets, a lot of discontent.
Vaccarino's daughter Nancy says her father's confrontational rhetoric mirrored his passion to help the working class, but at home he was just a nice, regular family guy.
He was a great cook. You could smell the aromas coming from that kitchen. That's what he loved to do. Loved music, loved to golf.
There were rumors that Vaccarino was cooperating with this federal organized crime investigation. This commission in Chicago was looking into allegations of racketeering, kickbacks, tax evasion, and embezzlement of union funds. Nancy says it was stressful for her dad.
It was sensational, it was good media, and I think they jumped on that at the beginning. Yeah, it wasn't always easy to read or hear about.
On Thursday, October 24th, 1985, Vaccarino was home alone in Shorewood, watching Game 5 of the World Series between the Kansas City Royals and the St. Louis Cardinals.
3-2 pitch coming. And it's ripped to right center field, and Van Slyke.
By 9 o'clock the next morning, Vaccarino's badly beaten body was found floating face down in his bathtub, pajamas still on, water running. King County detectives had no shortage of motives, but very few leads about the actual killer or killers.
Nobody saw a suspect enter the home, leave the home, and although the victim's car was removed from the crime scene and abandoned several miles away, no one saw the car leave the area.
The union leader's new Buick Riviera was ditched at this White Center McDonald's parking lot, his wallet prominently left for anyone to find at a local strip club miles away.
And that his death was definitely homicide.
Cairo TV, along with the national media, reported details from the crime scene, made it appear that organized crime henchmen had silenced Vaccarino for being a snitch.
There was also Parmesan cheese sprinkled over the victim when he was put in the bathtub, as if some sort of a calling to maybe a mob hit or a rat.
Detectives didn't say it publicly, but privately they thought Vaccarino's ransacked home looked a little staged. As the years went by, Vaccarino's daughter kept hoping for justice, but the case went cold with no suspects.
The longer time went on, it was, oh my God, this, we may never know. We may never have the answers.
For the next 27 years, Nancy figured her dad's murder would remain a mystery forever. But then a strange and violent encounter between a Kirkland doctor and a pair of would-be burglars reignited not only the Vaccarino homicide case, but other unsolved murders that have been on the cold case books for decades. The McAllister home sits tucked between a forest of trees at St. Edward State Park and the dock-filled shores of Lake Washington. It's about the last place a burglar with any brains would go. It's a dead-end street with few escape routes and high-tech security systems and gates everywhere. Yet, for some reason, around 10 p.m. on March 26, 2010, two men, dressed all in black, showed up and waited in the dark for Dr. Craig McAllister to arrive home.
He pops up when I'm right about here.
Dr. McAllister showed us where he first encountered one of the intruders in his driveway.
What was the purpose of their visit? Do you know?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's what we need to know.
In one terrifying moment of clarity, Dr. McAllister realized the threatening armed man wasn't there for his wallet. He wanted inside, where McAllister's wife Stacy and his 13-year-old daughter were hanging out, oblivious to the violence that was about to ensue.
As I lunged to him, he lunged at me, and I went for his neck and basically tackled him on his back. And then we're here, I'm on all fours, flailing as fast as I can possibly flail, just hoping that his hand can't, I'm assuming that if he's got a gun, it's in his pocket or someplace, and as long as I'm going at him and keeping his hands away from his pocket, he can't get to a gun.
But Dr. McAllister's battle was about to get lopsided. According to this King County incident report, Craig was successfully restraining the suspect until a second suspect emerged from the side of the house and assaulted him with a silver handgun.
So the first one, actually, I didn't feel like it stopped me, but then the second one stopped me, and the third one laid me out.
While Dr. McAllister lay dazed and bleeding from pistol whips to the head, the burglars went for the front door. This picture of a heavy boot print shows where they kicked it so hard the paint peeled. Now is the time Stacy became aware the family could be in serious danger.
Instinctually, you're taught from day one, call 911, and that's exactly what I did. I slammed the door, deadbolted, and ran right to the phone.
The attackers escaped, at least one of them, by stealing this tiny metal rowboat from a nearby beach. When former Seattle police officer Gary Kruger popped up dead in Lake Washington near that sunken boat in September, detectives had a hot new lead. Coming up next on this special Cairo Team 7 investigation, how a 2010 Kirkland home invasion, the 1985 hit of a Seattle union boss, and a tiny piece of DNA left behind by the killer of a Bellevue realtor in 2001 opens new leads in a slew of unsolved homicides here in the Pacific Northwest. From Cop to Killer returns in 2 minutes. When former Seattle police officer Gary Kruger's body floated to the surface of Lake Washington dead in 2010, homicide detectives from a half-dozen agencies gathered together and wondered, could this be their guy, that anonymous, mysterious, cold-blooded killer they'd all been looking for? Their guts told them yes, but proving it wasn't quite so easy. Windermere agent Mike Emmert's killer stabbed him multiple times, then placed him in a shower at a house for sale in Woodinville that successfully washed away valuable evidence. It turns out the murderer wasn't as careful inside the 40-year-old victim's SUV, leaving behind his own blood, thus traces of DNA. The King County Sheriff's Office submitted the sample in 2001, shortly after the murder, to a national crime database. Detective Scott Tompkins expected a quick match, but he waited and waited, surprised by the lack of results.
How could somebody commit this level of violence and not have a prior offense or be caught in the meantime for something and have their own DNA on file?
Tompkins had no way of knowing their DNA sample from Mike Emmert's unknown killer was that of convicted felon and former cop Gary Kruger. While patrolling Seattle streets in the 1970s, Officer Kruger had a mean reputation. He made headlines by shooting a man dead from the front seat of his patrol car. Then another time, getting fined $3,000 for beating a suspect in a parking garage. Cairo Team 7 investigators recently found that man, Warren Williamson.
He was just violent. He was mean. You couldn't reason with him.
Williamson says Kruger and his partner pummeled him after he ran a yellow light downtown, then made the mistake of asking why they stopped him.
They beat me. They hit me in the mouth. Mainly they were. You ever been beat so bad your hair hurts? They tried to kick me in the groin. They mopped the floor with me.
The Seattle Police Department pushed Kruger into retirement in 1980. He ventured into real estate for a while and then on to robbing banks at gunpoint. Despite separate stints in federal prison, one in '87 and one in 2003, the Bureau of Prisons and the FBI combined repeatedly failed to enter Kruger's DNA profile into their systems. Finally, in September of 2010, months after Kruger drowned fleeing a botched home invasion at a Kirkland doctor's home, King County detectives got the break they needed to solve realtor Mike Emmert's death. His widow, Mary Beth, was among the first to receive the news.
He just said, I want you to know that we have a rock-solid DNA match on Mike. And, I was stunned. I never thought I would hear that.
Mary Beth was relieved to know the name of her husband's killer and even more glad he was no longer a threat to anyone else.
I'm good with the fact Kruger's dead because there is no reason why somebody that awful should be walking around society. You know what? So good, he's dead. And I know that he didn't pass through the pearly gates with Mike standing there. I know he's in the bowels of hell, and that's where he belongs.
But Kruger's death posed a new problem for homicide detectives. They couldn't ask the killer why he killed Mike Emmert, a complete stranger. The realtor's murder had all the elements of a professional hit.
We believe that he was part of a greater conspiracy to kill Mike Emmert, and that somebody either paid for the murder or something was bargained for to have Mike Emmert murdered. What we're lacking is motive.
Detectives tell Team 7 investigators some of those answers and associations might lie here. Amargosa, Nevada sits just a stone's throw from the infamous Area 51, a 2-hour trek outside the bright lights of Las Vegas. Most folks who live here among the tumbleweeds and cacti consider themselves off the grid. Nobody asks about anybody else's business, so Tom Gross fits right in. Team 7 investigators discovered King County cold case homicide detectives visited Gross here at his secure property around Christmas time.
A neighbor tells me that Gross keeps to himself but is otherwise pleasant. When King County detectives arrived at this locked gate, that's not the personality they encountered.
A witness says Gross was hostile and uncooperative. He refused to answer questions about a lifelong pal named Gary Kruger. Kruger is a former Seattle cop turned professional killer whose DNA ties him to the 2001 stabbing death of Bellevue realtor Mike Emmert. Kruger, now deceased, was the best man at Tom Gross's wedding. To find out more about why a King County cold case homicide task force is so interested in Gross, Team 7 investigators traveled to Nevada. Gross was nowhere to be found.
Hi, my name's Chris Halsney.
Gross's youngest daughter, Brandy Nowak, told us he suddenly left town 2 months ago, never mentioning detectives paid him a visit.
It's about when the police came to see him. Did he tell you that?
No, my heart's going boom, boom, boom right now. I don't know what to say. I'm in shock right now.
You know where he went?
No, I don't. We haven't talked to him since he left.
His current location isn't the only thing Tom Gross kept secret from his daughter.
Brandy is unaware police consider her dad a person of interest in connection to her mother, Cheryl Gross's disappearance 20 years ago. Cheryl, who was raised in Lake Stevens, was last seen in 1991 at a Tigard, Oregon hotel with Tom. Brandy was told her mom left them when she was 5. Oregon police tell Team 7 investigators that's an unlikely scenario.
We're proceeding under the assumption that Cheryl may have been the target of foul play and or homicide. Tom Gross is the last person to have been known to be in contact with Cheryl. So he is considered a person of interest.
Hopefully before I die, I'll find out something.
Cheryl Gross's dad, Dick Carr, hopes the renewed police interest in his daughter's disappearance can bring him some long-sought peace.
It'd be a big relief to get it something solved so he could put some closure to it.
Still coming up on our special investigation from cop to killer. While King County cold case detectives scour the country for clues about Gary Kruger's associates, haunting similarities arise between the cold case murders of realtor Mike Emmert and Seattle Union boss Mario Vaccarino. Bellevue detectives have a deadly mystery waiting to be solved as well.
So you don't think the motive was burglary?
No. We believe the motive itself was the murder.
Next, never-before-released details in the 1984 death of Bellevue attorney Jim Barry and why police believe this professional killer didn't act alone. From Cop to Killer returns after a short break.
For the first time tonight, King County cold case homicide detectives have confided in Team 7 investigators that they now know who killed hotel and restaurant union employee president Mario Vaccarino in 1985. They say it was a professional killer, one who has ties to at least 3 other unsolved homicides here in the Pacific Northwest. But detectives say their work is far from over because they don't believe this killer worked alone.
On February 7, 1984, real estate attorney Jim Barry went to an unusually late evening appointment at his office with a mysterious client. His wife found his body at 3 a.m., shot and stabbed, the office ransacked. Although his wallet, watch, and jewelry were missing, detectives always believed that Barry was no random homicide victim.
So you don't think the motive was burglary?
No. We believe the motive itself was the murder and that the suspects made it look like a robbery to cover their tracks.
Bellevue police say evidence supported at least 2 killers inside Barry's office that night, but the case went cold without any real suspects. That changed in 2010 when King County detectives finally got a hit on some DNA from another murder, the 2001 death of realtor Mike Emmert. Emmert was stabbed, his watch and jewelry taken after being lured to an empty house for sale by a mysterious client. The detectives in the Barry case thought the similarities were just too much to ignore.
When you look at one case, I mean, you have that information to analyze, but then you see, 2 or 3 or 4 or however many other cases there are, and you start seeing the same patterns or the same signatures in these investigations. You realize the significance of them in your own case.
A long-delayed DNA test concluded Emmert's killer was a convicted bank robber and former cop named Gary Kruger. When Bellevue detective Robert Thompson heard Kruger's name, he immediately had a new prime suspect. It turns out attorney Barry represented a local bank and had sent letters to Kruger demanding a repayment of a large loan.
The motivation in this case appears to be a revenge.
A similar eureka moment happened with the unsolved, high-profile murder of hotel and restaurant employees union leader Mario Vaccarino. Vaccarino was beaten, then forcibly drowned in his own bathtub in October of 1985. The scenario was nearly identical to what happened with the realtor's murder.
We found where a longtime person of interest in the murder of Mario Vaccarino was also longtime friends with Gary Kruger, and that piqued our interest.
In a candid interview with Team 7 investigators, detectives on the Vaccarino case went on the record for the first time. They don't believe this union boss was killed by the mob, but rather by Gary Kruger as a favor to a friend. A police record provided to us says that friend remained with the union and moved up the chain of command.
We found a witness who Gary Kruger had confessed to that he had murdered Mario Vaccarino.
I'm sorry.
Vaccarino's daughter Nancy recently spoke with Team 7 investigators as well after cold case detectives revealed to her the name of one of her father's killers.
Have you ever heard the name Gary Kruger? And how did that come about?
Yes, I have.
Nancy's glance over that shoulder was to a detective in the room who nodded that she could answer, reminding us that the Vaccarino case remains open and active. Police continue to look for Kruger's mysterious, unknown associates.
I don't know how someone could live with knowing that they have knowledge of what happened. How can you live with yourself? I couldn't. But I think it's time. We need some answers. Someone has to answer for what happened to him.
If there's any doubt left in anyone's mind that Gary Kruger was a professional killer who would murder those who crossed him or for anyone with enough money to pay him, Team 7 investigators discovered that Kruger is tied to yet another unsolved homicide case. Gary Kruger's former friend and Seattle Police Department colleague Terry Dolan was beaten and shot to death in 1981 in what was made to look like a gas station robbery. Dolan's widow, who asked that we not show her face, says she has always suspected Kruger was the killer.
He had the eyes of a timber wolf. And they're these cold, blue eyes, and they're vacant. And at that time, I told Terry, I don't know who this man is, I don't know how you know him, but he is evil.
4 unsolved murders, a missing mother of 5, and a violent attack on a doctor's family in Kirkland, all tied to a single man. Yet none of these cases are officially closed.
You don't believe that Gary Kruger acted alone?
We don't believe Gary Kruger acted alone.
Gary Kruger is a cold-blooded killer, and I think that's about the closest thing you can say about him. There's nothing good you can say about Gary Kruger.
Mary Beth Emmert has spent the last decade trying to find peace while still seeking answers as to why her husband was targeted.
I know that Kruger's the one who was responsible for killing Mike. It's his DNA that we have a proven match to, so it's done. If there are others out there who are involved, I think that a lot of us still need to know.
Terry Dolan's wife and sons, the McAllister family, the Vaccarinos, Jim Barry's widow, and the parents and children of Cheryl Gross couldn't agree more.
Cold case detectives want to know what you know about Gary Kruger. Any rumor, friend, associate, or place he hung out just might be the key to catching people who either helped or hired Gary Kruger to kill. Go to our website at KairoTV.com for exclusive details about each of these unsolved homicides. I'm investigative reporter Chris Halsney. Thanks for joining us for this special presentation from Cop to Killer.